Welcome, fellow explorers, to the uncharted depths of the internet, a place shrouded in darkness and mystery, the deep web. This digital netherworld is a labyrinth of secrets, a haven for the illicit and the forbidden. It lures you in with its enigma, only to ensnare you in its web of danger. Amidst the obscurity, a forum caught my eye, a clandestine marketplace teeming with covert deals and dubious characters. The allure of the forbidden was too strong to resist. I was drawn to one character in particular, an entity known only as Shadow Man. His promise? Anything your heart desires for a price. A dangerous proposition, no doubt, filled with risks and uncertainties. Yet, enticed by the potential rewards, the thrill of the unknown, and perhaps a touch of recklessness, I found myself intrigued. And so, against my better judgment, I decided to reach out to this enigmatic figure, Shadow Man. Shadow Man promised me a deal too good to refuse, but something about him sent a chill down my spine. He was a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the dark web, a man who claimed to have the world at his fingertips. His words were as smooth as silk, yet as cold as ice. He spoke of rare treasures, of forbidden fruits, all for the right price. But every promise seemed wrapped in a veil of unease. Our interaction was a dance of words, each sentence a new step, each reply a new beat. His messages came fast, each one more enticing than the last, yet, with each passing moment, a gnawing feeling of dread began to take root within me. It was as if the more I delved into the world of Shadow Man, the more the world around me seemed to darken. But the lure of easy money, of a quick fix to my mounting problems, was too strong. It drowned out the warning bells in my head. I rationalized my fears, chalked them up to nerves, to the unfamiliarity of the deep web. And so, I made the decision to meet this enigmatic figure, to step into his world. He chose the location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. A fitting place for our clandestine meeting. It was a relic of a bygone era, a monument to decay. Its towering silhouette loomed against the midnight sky, a specter in the darkness. The rusted metal gates creaked open at my touch, revealing a cavernous space swallowed by shadow. As I stepped into the darkness of that warehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a nightmare. The air was thick with an eerie silence, the kind that amplifies every heartbeat, every breath. I could taste the fear in the back of my throat, the metallic tang of adrenaline. The world outside faded away, replaced by the cold, consuming darkness of the warehouse. And in that moment I realized that I was no longer just a visitor in Shadow Man's world, I was a part of it. In the inky blackness of the warehouse, a figure emerged from the shadows, the Shadow Man. A shroud of darkness seemed to cling to him, making him more a silhouette than a man. The air around us grew heavy, thick with an unspeakable dread as the reality of our clandestine meeting sank in. He moved with an eerie grace, his footsteps barely making a sound on the cold concrete floor. Extending a hand cloaked in darkness, he proffered a nondescript bag, my ticket to easy riches, or so I had thought. The deal was simple enough. I hand over the cash, he hands over the goods. Yet, something felt fundamentally wrong, like a discordant note in a symphony. As I reached out to take the bag, an icy shiver ran down my spine. His touch was not that of a man, it was cold, lifeless, like touching the void itself. Before I could even count my potential earnings, a sound broke the silence. A low, bellowing laugh that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss. It was a sound that could curdle blood, a sound that was inhuman. My heart pounded like a drum against the cage of my ribs. The sinister grin on his face was illuminated by the faint ghostly glow of the moonlight filtering through the broken windows. His eyes, two gleaming orbs of malignant glee, stared at me unblinkingly. That's when it hit me. The chilling truth that I had been too blind, too greedy to see. The Shadow Man was not a man at all, he was something else, something from beyond the realms of our understanding. The realization was like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. His laughter still echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of my foolishness. As I looked into the eyes of this monstrous entity, a terrifying realization washed over me. Shadow Man was no man at all. Fear surged through me, urging me to run, but Shadow Man was faster, his sinister grin the last thing I saw before the world turned black. I was a mouse caught in a trap, the cheese I was promised turning into a bitter pill. His chant echoed in the cavernous space, a language unfamiliar yet chilling to the bone. Then came the pain, a burning sensation that spread across my chest like wildfire. It was as if his words had materialized into a lethal weapon, piercing my very being. Shadow Man's voice haunted me, promising an eternity of torment. I was fading, slipping into the abyss. Each heartbeat, weaker than the last, echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of the life I once had. My vision blurred. The taste of iron filled my mouth as my life's essence seeped away. The cold, concrete ground beneath me seemed to tremble with the echoes of Shadow Man's laughter, a chilling soundtrack to my impending demise. His words, a twisted lullaby, spun a tale of darkness and despair, a future filled with torment beyond comprehension. The world around me grew quieter, the city's distant hum replaced by the deafening silence of my own mortality. I could no longer feel the cold, the pain, just a strange sense of detachment. I was no longer a part of this world. I was a ghost, a mere shadow of my former self, trapped in the purgatory between life and the unknown. As darkness crept in, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the end or just the beginning of my nightmare? One night, curiosity led me to the shadowy corners of the dark web, a place I now wish I had never ventured into. As an adventurer of the digital age, I was drawn to the mysterious aura of the dark web, a place where the sun never rises and digital footprints disappear as swiftly as they are made. My journey began innocuously enough, through the labyrinth of encrypted sites, hidden services and cyber alleys that form the dark web. It's a place that pulses with the energy of the forbidden, the outlawed and the downright macabre. And then I found it. A peculiar chat room, a digital gathering of faceless entities discussing topics that would make the bravest souls cringe. It was like stumbling upon an underground society, a clandestine meeting of minds reveling in the grotesque and the terrifying. The conversations, the topics, it was all so disturbing, so fascinating. As I lurked, a silent observer in the shadowy corners of this digital underworld, I saw something that caught my attention. A video link. It was dropped casually into the conversation, presented as a challenge, a dare. The sender claimed it to be the scariest thing a person could ever witness. The chat room buzzed with anticipation. The link sat there, a digital Pandora's box waiting to be opened. I could feel my curiosity stirring, the thrill of the unknown tempting me. It was a challenge, a dare, and I've never been one to back down from either. So I did what any digital explorer would do. I clicked on it. Little did I know the horror I was about to witness would forever change my perception of the dark web. Someone dropped a video link, promising it to be the scariest thing anyone would ever see. Never one to back down, I clicked on it. The video started grainy and old, revealing a man sitting in a poorly lit room, his eyes wide with terror. This was no ordinary fear, but the kind that seizes your heart, the kind that comes from knowing something unspeakably dreadful is about to happen. As I watched, the man's eyes darted around the room, his breathing grew ragged and frantic. He was alone, or so it seemed, but there was an air of anticipation, a sense of impending dread that was almost tangible. I could feel it through the screen, a cold shiver that ran down my spine. Slowly a shadow began to creep into the frame. It was a darkness so profound, so absolute, it seemed to suck the light out of the room. It moved with an unsettling deliberation, inching closer to the man who remained oblivious of the impending doom. It was like watching a nightmare unfold, the kind where you want to scream to warn the unsuspecting victim, but you're paralyzed, trapped in your own terror. The man's terror escalated, his eyes growing wider, his breathing more ragged. He was aware now, aware of the shadow, the creeping darkness that was now only a breath away, and then, he screamed. It was a sound that chilled me to the bone, a cry of pure, unadulterated fear. It echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder of the horror unfolding on the screen. His screams filled the room, his face twisted in a mask of terror, but the shadow was relentless. It continued its slow, deliberate advance, indifferent to his fear, his pleas for mercy. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, only this was real, far too real. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. The shadow enveloped the terrified man completely, his screams abruptly cut off, leaving only the echo of his terror. The video ended, leaving me with an image that would haunt my dreams for nights to come. The man, the shadow, the screams, they were all etched into my memory, a chilling reminder of the horrifying video I had stumbled upon in the darkest corners of the web. The video ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving me in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. The screams, the dread, the shadow, it all echoed in my mind, refusing to fade away. I sat there, my gaze fixed on the now black screen, the chilling silence in stark contrast to the horrific scene that had just unfolded. I found myself grappling with the reality of what I had just witnessed. A cold shiver ran down my spine, the echo of the man's screams still ringing in my ears. A feeling of dread washed over me. the disturbing images from the video seeping into my mind, etching themselves into my consciousness. I had stumbled upon a corner of the dark web that was darker than I could have ever imagined. A place where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred. A place that harbored something truly evil. And that evil, it seemed, had found its way to me through that grainy video. The terror in that man's eyes, the shadow creeping up on him, the screams that filled the air. It was all too real, too raw. It wasn't just a video. It was a window into a realm of darkness, a glimpse into an abyss that I wish I had never peered into. It felt as if a heavy weight had settled on my chest, the aftertaste of fear lingering long after the video had ended. I was left questioning, disturbed, my mind a whirlpool of thoughts. What was that shadow? Why was it there? What happened to the man? The questions kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. The video had left an indelible mark on me, its horrifying images forever etched in my mind. I was left with a chilling realization, a haunting truth that I could not escape. I had seen something that I shouldn't have, something that was meant to stay hidden in the dark corners of the web. In the silence that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just seen something truly malevolent, something that should not exist in our world. As I sat there, still reeling from what I had witnessed, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My eyes darted around my room, the stark silence now deafening. The familiar surroundings no longer felt safe, rather they bore an uncanny resemblance to the eerie setting of the video. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed the similarity between the layout of my room and the one in the video. The same worn-out bookshelf, the same dimly lit lamp, even the same crack on the ceiling. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. The eerie coincidence was too much to bear. That's when I heard it. The faint, yet unmistakable sound of heavy breathing, just like in the video. It was as if the video had somehow leaped out of the cyber abyss of the dark web and into my reality. And then I realized, the room in the video, it was eerily similar to my own. Ever considered the secrets buried in the depths of the dark web? It was an average night my curiosity piqued, leading me to explore the unseen corners of the dark web. As I delved deeper, I stumbled upon an auction site, a digital bazaar peddling the peculiar and the macabre. Among the oddities up for bidding, like vintage books with cryptic titles, ancient-looking dolls with glassy, vacant stares and eerie artifacts that seemed to hum with an energy of their own, one item stood out. It was labeled, "Box of Shadows." The description was nebulous, hinting at a mysterious power held within. A skeptic myself, I found the premise amusing, if not a little intriguing. So, on a whim, I placed a bid, treating it as nothing more than a harmless game. But then, as the digital gavel fell, I found myself the unexpected victor. And then, to my surprise, I won the bid for the Box of Shadows. A few days later, a small, ornate box turned up at my doorstep. There it was, seemingly innocent, yet an undercurrent of something sinister lurked beneath its surface. It wasn't large, maybe the size of a shoebox, but it carried a weight with it that was difficult to describe. Crafted from dark, dense wood, the box was adorned with symbols, carved intricately into its surface. They were strange, unknown to me, yet they seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Each line, each curve, each mark was a part of an intricate dance that drew the eyes and held them captive. As my fingers traced the cold, mysterious etchings, a shiver ran down my spine. An unsettling feeling washed over me, a sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. It was as if the box was not just a box, but a container for something far more chilling. With a deep breath, I decided to see what was inside. Inside, there was an old journal filled with cryptic writings and drawings. It was an artifact from a different era, bound in weathered leather and filled with pages as brittle as autumn leaves. The symbols and sketches were like nothing I'd ever seen before, filled with strange creatures and geometric patterns that twisted and turned in ways that seemed to defy logic. As I traced my fingers over the faded ink, a chill ran down my spine. The words were in a language I didn't recognize, yet they held a power that was palpable, a dread that seeped into my very bones. It was as if the journal was alive, whispering its dark secrets into my mind, filling me with an overwhelming sense of unease. The more I read, the heavier the atmosphere became. It felt like the walls were closing in, and every shadow seemed to dance and flicker with a sinister intent. As I closed the journal, I couldn't shake off the fear that had taken hold of me. That night, the nightmares began. The world of sleep, once a sanctuary, now became a theater of terror. I dreamt of shadowy specters lurking in the ink-black darkness, whispering cryptic words in a language that chilled my bones. Their murmurs, though incomprehensible, were laced with an ominous dread that left me gasping for breath upon waking. Reality, I soon found, was no refuge. The box, now a sinister presence in my life, would emanate an eerie tapping sound as if something was trapped within, begging to be freed. Even more disturbing, the box defied all attempts to be discarded. Each time I tried to rid myself of it, it would return, as if bound to me by an unseen force. The corners of my room became a playground for shadows. They danced and twisted, forming grotesque figures that vanished the moment I turned to look. I was stuck with the box, and it seemed to have brought something dark into my life. The strange occurrences didn't stop, and then, something even more unsettling happened. The tapping from the box grew louder, more insistent. It echoed through the silence of my house, a constant reminder of the dark object that had found its way into my life. But it wasn't just the tapping. Strange, unexplainable things began to happen. Items would disappear, only to reappear in the most unlikely places. My house, once a sanctuary, started to feel oppressive, the air thick with an unseen presence. During the day I could almost convince myself that it was all in my head. But when night fell, the reality of my situation became impossible to ignore. The shadows in the corners of my rooms seemed to move, to grow. They'd twist and contort into grotesque shapes, whispering incoherent words that sent shivers down my spine. The dreams, too, took a sinister turn. The shadowy figures were no longer just lurking in the darkness. They started to approach me, their whispers growing louder, more desperate. Every morning I would wake up drenched in sweat, the echo of their voices still ringing in my ears. As the days turned into weeks, I began to feel a growing sense of dread. The box, I realized, was not just some oddity from the dark web, it was something more. Something dark and cursed. It was as if it had a life of its own. It didn't want to be thrown away, didn't want to be parted from me. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface now consumed me. I could feel it in every corner of my house, in every creak of the floorboards, in every gust of wind. It was as if the box had unleashed something into my life, something that didn't want to leave. I tried to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't real, but the reality was inescapable. The box was not just a box, it was a carrier of shadows, a harbinger of darkness. And I, in my curiosity, had invited it into my life. As I sat there staring at the box, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. A chill ran down my spine, a cold sensation that left me paralyzed. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum at war, each beat echoing the dread that filled me. I could feel it, a presence, heavy and oppressive, filling the room. It was no longer just me and the box. The shadows from my nightmares, the whispers in the dark, they were no longer confined to the realm of dreams. They had crawled their way into reality, into my reality. It was as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a world that was always there, lurking just beyond my sight. The box, the journal, the nightmares. They were all pieces of a puzzle, pieces that fit together to form a terrifying picture. I was no longer alone. I was sharing my space, my life, with something unseen, something from the dark web. And as I turned around, there it was, a shadowy figure standing right behind me. I had invited something from the dark web into my world. The dark web is like an abyss. Once you fall in, there's no telling where you'll end up. Imagine a world veiled in obscurity, a digital wilderness filled with the strange, the unexplained, and the downright terrifying. This is the dark web, a labyrinth of hidden websites where the average internet dweller dare not tread. My journey into this cryptic realm began with a forum, a gathering of the lost and the forbidden. Here, the anonymous shared their tales of the uncanny, their encounters with the dark underbelly of the internet. It was a place of whispers and shadows, where every post held a story more chilling than the last. It was impossible to tell fact from fiction, but one thing was certain. The dark web was home to things that defied explanation. Amidst the sea of disturbing tales, a single post stood out. It was a beacon in the darkness, an enigma that piqued my curiosity. The author claimed to have stumbled upon something strange, something that didn't belong, a link, a portal to another corner of the dark web, a place that hadn't seen the light of day since the 90s. The description painted a picture of a website cloaked in shadows with ominous red text and images that flickered like ghostly apparitions. It was like stepping into a forgotten crypt, an echo of the past that sent chills down my spine. Curiosity propelled me forward, leading me to this digital relic of a bygone era. It was a place of intrigue and dread, a maze of links and threads that promised to unveil the secrets of the dark web. The more I explored, the deeper I was drawn into its enigmatic embrace. It was then that I found it, a mention of something called the Black Room, a place of unimaginable horrors, a place that promised an experience beyond the realm of the ordinary. The mere mention of it sent a shiver of anticipation coursing through my veins. And then there it was, a link shrouded in mystery and danger leading to the Black Room. It was as if I was stepping into the void, a place where the rules of reality didn't apply. The Black Room, a name as ominous as the feeling it evoked. It was nothing more than a black screen and a solitary chat box, a minimalist design that somehow screamed danger. I felt like an intruder, a trespasser in a realm where I didn't belong. In the midst of this digital abyss, I typed a simple hello, my greeting echoing into the unseen corners of this peculiar room on the dark web. The response came from someone, or perhaps something, known only as X. The name, as obscure as the place itself, was an enigma wrapped in a riddle. X began to ask questions, strange and eerie queries that seemed to probe the depths of my psyche. "What are you afraid of?" it asked. A chill ran down my spine at the question. What kind of place asks you about your deepest fears? I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. But curiosity, that insidious little imp, pushed me to respond. "What are you willing to do to face your fears?" It was the next question, and it was even more unsettling than the first. What did it mean? What did this entity want with my fears? The air around me seemed to grow colder, the light from my screen casting long, ominous shadows across the room. I felt a creeping sense of dread, an insidious unease that began to gnaw at the edges of my mind. Every instinct was screaming at me to disconnect, to retreat from this strange and terrifying place. But there was a morbid fascination that held me captive, a dark allure that I couldn't resist. The conversation continued, each question more disturbing than the last, each answer pulling me deeper into the web of fear and uncertainty. And then, against my better judgment, I accepted X's invitation to a video call. I should have known better, but curiosity was my downfall. I had followed the rabbit down the rabbit hole, and now I was face to face, or rather screen to screen, with the enigma known only as X. As soon as the video call connected, I was greeted not by a human face but by a jumble of pixels, constantly morphing, shifting and changing. It was a digital chimera, a nightmarish mosaic of colors and shapes that seemed to pulse with an unnatural life of its own. The image was so distorted that it was impossible to discern any discernible facial features. It was as if I was looking into a void, a black hole where a face should have been. The sight was jarring, eerie, and sent a shiver of dread coursing through my veins. Then, X began to speak, but the sounds that emanated from my computer speakers were not words, at least not in any language I recognized. It was a guttural, otherworldly noise, like the growl of a beast from the deepest depths of the abyss. The sound was so raw, so primal that it seemed to bypass my ears and went straight to the primal fear center of my brain. I felt a wave of terror wash over me, a cold, icy dread that seemed to seep into my very bones. It was a feeling of absolute horror, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your heart pound like a drum. I was trapped, ensnared in this digital spider's web, a puppet caught in the strings of this faceless puppeteer. I tried to end the call, to break free from this horrifying experience, but I couldn't. My hands were shaking, my fingers frozen over the keyboard. I was paralyzed by fear, a prisoner of my own curiosity. I could only sit there, trapped in the glow of the computer screen, as the distorted image of X continued to shift, and the guttural sounds continued to echo in my ears. I tried to end the call, but it was too late. I was already in its clutches. The dark web had shown me its true colors, and I had seen something that I could never unsee, heard something that I could never unhear. I had ventured into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back. When the call finally ended, I was left in a state of terror. The screen went black, and silence filled the room, replacing the guttural, otherworldly sounds that had seemed to crawl under my skin. I sat there, frozen and shaking, my mind struggling to comprehend the nightmare I had just experienced. The eerie face of X, the distorted mess of pixels shifting and changing, was seared into my mind. It was a face that wasn't human, a face that echoed the depths of the unknown, the depths of the dark web. The questions X had asked, the fear they had instilled, lingered, casting a long dark shadow over my thoughts. I knew then that I had stumbled upon something truly evil, something that should never have been found, let alone unleashed. It was a sinister corner of the dark web, a place where the unimaginable lurked and thrived. What had I unleashed? What was X? I was left with more questions than answers and a fear that still haunts me to this day.